In Midsomer Wellow, someone is killing the members of a bell-ringing team. What a ding-a-ling! Waiting for a bigger reaction to that.
Oh.
We're talking obsession turning into insanity.
The history of bell ringing.
And when Troy becomes a man on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me as always is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric. Today we are talking about Ring Out Your Dead, the fourth episode of the fifth series. It originally aired September 15th, 2002. It was directed by Sarah Hellings and written by Christopher Russell. Let's ring some bells! I'm very enthusiastic about bell ringing these days.
You were, and it kind of just died at the end. It was like, let's ring some bells.
Let's ring some bells.
There we go. Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
Oh, come on, Reggie. Church bells are an instrument of happiness.
They're an instrument of God, and we are here to protect the house of God. You're a bunch of depraved heathens.
I'm not a heathen, Reggie. You know I'm not. I'm in church every Sunday. In church, not just bell ringing.
Yes, and you're supposed to be a civilizing influence on this bunch of desperados, but you're not, are you? You're weak, and the weak must face the consequences.
Is that in the Bible too, Reggie? Shift him, Liam.
It's the middle of the night in Midsomer Wellow, and someone is moving frantically through a church. He rushes up to the bell tower where he is hit in the head by a church bell and dies. A group of people carry his body and then drop him down a well. Judging by their clothes and use of a lantern, this is the past? I'm sure all of this gets explained later. So we cut to the same church, clearly in modern times, and aging grump Reggie Burton accosts Peter Fogden as he tries to go inside. Peter is the leader of the local bell-ringing team, and Reggie hates the bells, finding them sacrilegious or something. Honestly, it just seems like cranky old white guy stuff for the entire episode. Anywho, Peter ignores him and goes up to the tower to practice with his crew, which includes engaged couple Liam Booker and Emma Tyso, quiet Marcus Stedman, and widow Frances LeMay. They are practicing for a big bell-striking competition coming up in a few days, a competition Peter, who comes from a family of bell ringers, is obsessed with winning. They all wait for Greg Tutt to arrive, but he is running late as his wife Sue is currently throwing him out and ending their marriage due to Greg's excessive cheating. I mean, he's literally in bed with the sexy grande dame Rosalind Parr as Sue chucks his clothes out the window. He eventually shows up to practice and flirt with Emma while wearing a pink bathrobe because he couldn't bother putting on his clothes, I guess? Reggie stops off at the home of his nephew Hugh as workers take furniture out. Hugh says he is renovating as he is a successful businessman, but in reality he is selling things off because he is broke and too proud to tell his uncle. Meanwhile, Troy and Barnaby show up to the church to meet with Joyce, who is doing etchings there with local archivist Maisie Gooch. Barnaby recognizes Peter as a worker at the Coston Police Headquarters, where later that day, Peter celebrates a winning bet his team placed on a horse race that has won them all $30,000, with everyone getting an even share. They all celebrate by ringing some bells and drinking, apparently, as Greg shows up at Rosalind's place a little drunk. She's letting her bit of rough stay there for a little while. Before they hop into bed, though, Greg finds a mysterious letter addressed to him slid under her door and hides it from her. She finds it the next day pretty easily and then burns it, saying that Greg will never keep her waiting again. Meanwhile, Hugh drowns his sorrows with herbal tea at Sue's tea shop, while her employee Angie tells her that Sue deserves part of Greg's share of the prize. After all, he used money he took from the till for the bet. For some reason, Barnaby and Joyce go to listen to the bell practice, and they witness Reggie trying to stop the ringers, threatening them with vengeance. As they begin practice, blood starts dripping on Emma and splattering everywhere. They discover Greg's body up in the rafters with the bells. He was shot in the heart, and on his body is a piece of paper that reads, "Ding Dong Bell." Barnaby interrogates the ringers and discovers that all of them have access to the keys to the bell tower, so any of them could have shot Greg up there. Peter is still only focused on winning the competition, and Marcus says he saw Greg that morning, and Greg was bragging that he had received a letter from Emma inviting him to an illicit meeting. This sets off Liam and Emma, who deny it. Troy interviews Rosalind, who tells him that she was going to kick Greg out and even shredded his clothes, but doesn't admit to the letter. She also hits on Troy real hard. Barnaby goes and talks to Sue, who isn't too sad about Greg's death and had no reason to kill him since she'd already chucked him out. Angie says a lot of people didn't like Greg because of his philandering, and he seemed to annoy Peter most of all. Reggie visits Hugh, who tells him that since Hugh is in such a strong place financially, he's going to use his money to fix up the church on the condition they sell the bells. This makes Hugh a little upset. Liam breaks things off with Emma, thinking she wrote the letter, but then decides she's telling the truth and the wedding is back on. Barnaby learned that the gun used to kill Greg was an Enfield revolver, commonly issued in World War II. They also find a scrap of paper from Rosalind's trash that came from the burnt letter. She admits she lied to protect Emma, thinking she killed Greg. Barnaby goes to Maisie's and meets Dennis and Jen, her nephew and his wife. Jen is pregnant, by the way. Barnaby asks Maisie if she has ever seen anyone with a gun, and she says that Francis was a championship shooter. Francis used to have a popular shooting club, so a lot of people in town know how to shoot. The next day after Emma and Liam's wedding, Emma is shot and killed, and someone hangs the sign, Vickers in the Well. Tourist info, this is our first and only time in Midsomer Wellow, a lovely village known for its frequent bell ringing. They also have a lovely tea shop. I said they have a lovely tea shop! The damn bells, it is so hard to hear here.
I know. St. Catherine's Church is portrayed by St. Leonard's Church in Watlington, except for the interior of the bell tower, which was St. Michael's in Bray, while the bells themselves were from St. Dunstan's in Monk's Risborough.
So, this episode opens with a very weird opening, where it is in the past, but they never really give us any clear indication it's the past until we kind of get some context clues.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find out later that it is, I guess we are seeing the past in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Which is a little weird. They normally at least set it up with a heading or something, right?
Yeah.
But it also had like a wonderful frenetic pace.
Mm-hmm.
Great camera work as we follow the guy up the stairs. The music was perfect. So visually, it was really cool.
Yes, it really was. And I think it's one of those great openings that you're not quite sure what's going on, which I do like.
Yeah. I also, at one point, I was like, God, there's so many stairs.
It's a bell tower.
No wonder he's wheezing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we see the body dumped down a well. And my first thought was, hey, don't worry, a 10-year-old can help you out of that. So then we kind of cut to this opening where online, some people say this is a faux pas. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But because they say that Peter goes and unlocks the church for the practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next thing we see is Joyce inside doing a rubbing, doing one of these etchings. And they're like, well, why does he have to unlock the door if she's already in there?
For me, I always took that there was some amount of time in between him opening the church and Joyce doing the rubbings and everything, because that just seems logical.
That's kind of what I thought. I just was like, I thought it was funny that this is pointed out as a continuity error. Like,
Yeah. Nah.
Whatever. So the first 30 minutes really does center around this relationship because it takes a little while before Greg is murdered.
Yeah.
So we get basically kind of this funny relationship between Greg, Sue, and Rosalind.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of this kind of comedic intro to these characters?
I thought it was well done because I thought the actors, especially Claire Holman, it was so good. I really thought it was nicely funny. You need these breaks where things are humorous, and especially at the beginning, it helps because you need some levity.
Yeah. I liked it. I also the actor who played Greg, I thought played that character with a certain bit of goofy charm and charisma.
Mm-hmm.
That I think he didn't seem malicious. He just seemed selfish.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just he's a bro.
Yeah. But a very charming one. He comes he does pull off a pink bathrobe.
Oh yeah. Very nicely.
But no idea why he's wearing the pink bathrobe since he's also holding all of his clothes.
Yeah.
Could have just put those on anytime.
Yeah.
So we get that opening introduction of Rosalind where she's technically under the covers.
Mm-hmm.
Does Sue know?
I don't know. She probably assumes she probably no longer cares.
That may be the case. I just thought it was a really funny thing of just They're having this big freak out, and I'm not even going to mention the fact that there's a naked woman next to you.
Yeah.
Sue also accuses Angie of canoodling with Greg. Was she?
I don't know. They don't quite flesh that out. They don't flesh out Angie's relationship with Liam and
Angie's
with Liam and Emma. Yeah.
Angie's a weird character because
Yeah.
Angie is just kind of there, and she's there for some comic relief and whatnot, but she has weird reactions to things that is like, is she more emotionally involved with these people? And they do not really make that clear.
Yeah.
I loved it when Sue tells Roger they're closed because my marriage is ending.
Yeah.
And I was like, waiting for Roger, like, I don't care.
Yeah. I did like his reaction. Good for you.
Greg was the source of several great lines, where Rosalind describes her relationship as exclusively carnal.
Yeah.
And Peter describes him as he had good hands and stamina, which Barnaby goes, yes, no one seems to dispute that.
Yeah. There were a lot of good entendres in here.
Yeah, it was a really fun opening. One strategic question. So Rosalind burns that letter, right? She just sets it on fire in front of her window with like the curtains and everything like that. Like no trash can or water or anything. Playing a risky game there.
Rosalind plays risky games, okay?
That is true. That is, she was the basis for Wicked Game.
Yeah.
Why do Barnaby and Joyce watch the bells?
And why did Troy set them up?
Yeah, like that. Like, there's a weird line that Troy said that set them up to watch it, and I'm like, how? Is Troy in charge all of a sudden?
Yeah. Yeah.
That just struck me as like a weird thing that they needed to put them there.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
Because they would have been called in for the murder anyways.
That's true. But it gets Joyce involved. We like Joyce.
We like Joyce. Joyce has a fun episode.
Yeah.
We also get the really, I thought was so tragic, was the Liam and Emma story, which starts kind of sweet. And then because she's accused of cheating with Greg, Liam's temper goes volatile. And then he, has a sleep on it.
I guess.
What did you think of that really funny scene where he's apologizing to her?
And the bus line?
Yes.
Yeah. That's almost as funny as the reason she objects to him calling off the wedding is that her mother has cooked all the food already.
Which is like, but isn't the wedding supposed to be in like 2 days? What are they having?
Apparently things that can get cooked ahead of time. You can make some things ahead of time.
That is true, although nobody ate anything at that wedding.
No, they didn't.
When you see them look so happy, right? They come out of that church and they're the night before, and they very clearly do care about each other and love each other. That makes the death scene so much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a sad way and vicious way to kill someone on their wedding day.
And senselessly. As we will learn in the second half, there is no real motive here. It's not like Emma was a bad person. The murderer was unbalanced, and they just died. This something we say in America: another senseless gun death.
Yeah, yeah.
The gun deaths don't really count as strange kills. They may in the UK, not in America.
Not in America.
But our strange kill this week: guy gets hit in the head with a bell.
Yeah. When I was doing my research on bells, they do stress how dangerous they are, especially when they are in the upside down position, which is how they start when they start the ringing of the bells, and I'll get into that. But when it's a very unstable position, so that it's very dangerous. And they say if you are not a trained bell ringer, do not go up when the bells are in that position.
Well, since you did all this research, maybe it's time to show your hard work. Eileen, take us to your history corner for the history of bell ringing.
All right. In the early days of Christianity, missionaries used small bells to call their followers to worship. Around 400 CE, Paulinus, Bishop of Nola in Italy, introduced bells into Christian churches, and by 330 they had become widespread. In 750, the Archbishop of York ordered all priests to toll their bells at certain times. Bells were one of the few man-made sounds that were loud enough to be heard over great distances, especially when they started to be hung in bell towers. It is said that they could scare off invading armies or drive away demons. One legend says that the bells of Canterbury Cathedral tolled themselves when Archbishop Thomas à Becket was murdered there. Initially, these bells were hung on a single spindle so that they could only swing back and forth, in a very limited way, with the ringing coming from a clapper inside the bell. Other bells are sounded when the bell is struck by a hammer or rope. Some bell towers are freestanding, and English has adopted campanile, the Italian word for bell tower, to differentiate these from those attached to churches or other buildings. Steeple is another word used for an attached church tower, usually spired and often containing bells and a clock. It was important to know when to go to church services, and the church bells still call the faithful to prayer. Changes in bell technology were happening during the Renaissance, and the Reformation in England gave the excuse for many churches to ditch their old papist bells for newfangled ones mounted on a whole wheel that could swing in a complete circle. This gave the ringer greater control, especially when a stay was added that could start and stop the ringing at will. This allowed for what came to be called change ringing, developed in England in the 17th century. The Lincoln Cathedral Guild dates back to 1612, while the Ancient Society of Ringers of St. Stephen was founded in Bristol in 1620. Change ringing is the art of ringing a set of tuned bells in a continually varying order. Traditionally, they start and end by doing a traditional sequence in order of pitch, starting with a treble bell and ending with a tenor, regardless of the number of bells. There are rules about sequences of the permutations that you can learn about by watching some videos on the subject, and I watched a lot of videos. In 1668, the book Tintinologia by Richard Duckworth and Fabian Stedman laid down the first written rules and techniques for change ringing. 9 years later, Stedman expanded on this with all the new techniques that had been developed in his book Campanologia. Compositions were created in which the bells are never sounded in the same order twice. This can go on for hours. This complex system of changes are known as a peal, and Stedman is known as the father of modern bell ringing. Bell ringing became very fashionable at this time as well, as it provided both physical exercise and mental rigor. Competitions began to spring up among bands of bell ringers, especially in the countryside. The size of bell ringing bands were determined by the number of bells in the tower. The more bells, the more bell ringers, and the longer they could ring without repeating a permutation. In rural areas, bell ringer behavior began to deteriorate, and the shillings that were paid by the church soon made their way to the pub. Tavern keepers loved an active band of bell ringers. A rift developed between bell ringers and clergy, and heavy drinking and bad language were frequent in the belfry. In 1839, church reform returned control of the bell towers to the church rectors, and church-going by the bell ringers was actively encouraged. This cleaned up bell ringing, and in 1896, Miss Alice White became the first woman to ring a full peal. Bell ringing was once again respectable. Disillusion with religion after World War I led to a decline in church-going and bell ringing, but the silencing of church bells during the Second World War led to a revival of interest. On January 1, 2000, approximately 95% of all church bells in the UK were rung. The ringing of bells accompanied the Olympic torch in 2012 as it made its way to London for the opening ceremony, which was opened by Tour de France winner Bradley Wiggins tolling a specially made Olympic bell. The pealing of bells is an essential part of the sounds of many major cities. What is Paris without the bells of Notre Dame? In 2015, while I was in London, we heard the bells of Westminster Abbey ring in celebration of the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta. The bells of Westminster Abbey and the other churches of London are an essential part of any royal celebration or commemoration. In 2023, over 2,000 volunteers signed up to be bell ringers for the coronation of King Charles III.
So, what bell ringing are we seeing in this? Is this the Stedman style? Is that what we're watching here?
Yeah, this is basically classic change ringing with 6 bells. Mm-hmm. You have to have a really sturdy bell tower, to be able to hold those big bells. So not all churches have this type of bell ringing. There are only 50 change ringing societies in the U.S. because there aren't that many bell towers that can handle those large bells in the U.S. One of them is at the University of Chicago, and they have a very interesting video that you can watch on that.
Okay. So after all this, would you say that you like Big Bells? Please do not lie.
I like Big Bells, and I cannot lie. and Eric did a little dance.
That's why someday we might have video, but not today.
Not today. Not today, Satan.
Nope. Get behind me, bell ringer.
So really, it's there. A lot of the stuff they bring up about the bell ringers and the is very accurate. You know, when they mention the bell ringers and the keg of beer and you know them coming in conflict with the vicar and everything. It's a little later, but you know, I'm sure those reforms took a little while to kick in. So 1860 is not out of the realm of possibility for that kind of thing.
Feels like someone should be doing like a Western style film, like cleaning up bell. I'm coming in to clean up this bell ring in town.
I think that's what Reggie was trying to do.
Yeah. So we jump into the cast highlights?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. We're going to start with Dugald Bruce Lockhart, who played Mimbo Greg Tutt. Now, he comes from the Lockhart family, which includes diplomats, headmasters, and authors. Our Lockhart has done a lot of theater work, especially with the Propeller Theater Company. They do Shakespeare's works with an all-male cast, very much like you would have seen in Shakespeare's day. He's appeared in Brookside, Trust, The Crown, and The Castaways. Gemma Jones was kind of sort of crazy Maisie Gooch. She's a Rotograd who's been acting on stage and screen since the 60s. She won a BAFTA in 2014 for her supporting role in the TV film Marvelous. She's also played Polly Pomfrey in the Harry Potter franchise. She's appeared in The Devils, Bridget Jones' Diary, Sense and Sensibility, Spooks, and Gentleman Jack. Most recently, she was in Wicked Little Letters. Carmen du Sautoy was Troy seducer Rosalind Parr. She's done a lot of theater work over the years and was nominated for several major theater awards for her performance in Once in a Lifetime. On screen, she played Saida, the belly dancing temptress, in The Man with the Golden Gun. She's also appeared in Astronauts, Chess Game, The Orchid House, Ab Fab, and most recently in The Queens of Mystery. Lindsay Marshall, or apparently Lindisay, as she's listed in the credits, played Doom Bride Emma Tyso. Yeah, they did not have spell check, apparently.
Yeah.
She has won several theater awards, including a Critics Circle Theater Award and a TMI Theater Award. This episode was a very early on-screen role for her. Afterwards, she would go on to play Cleopatra on the kind of much-loved at the time show Rome, and also appeared in The Hours, Being Human, Garrow's Law, Inside Man, and Insomnia. Graham Crowden was hater of bells and lies, Reggie Barton. According to Wikipedia, he often played eccentric scientists, teachers, and doctors. So let's see here. He played a doctor in the films Oh Lucky Man and Britannia Hospital, and a history master in If. He almost played a doctor in Doctor Who when he was originally offered the role of the Fourth Doctor. He wasn't willing to commit to 3 years, which was required for the role, so that went to Tom Baker. Now, he's also appeared in For Your Eyes Only, Calendar Girls, and Possession. He passed away in 2010. Gwen Taylor was sharpshooter Frances LeMay. She got interested in acting while actually working as a bank manager. In the 70s, she got in the orbit of the Monty Python crew and appeared in Life of Brian, as well as Python-related works like The Ruddles' All You Need Is Cash and Ripping Yarns. In fact, Eric Idle called her the best comic actress he ever worked with. She also was supposed to be in The Meaning of Life. She was going to be in the infamous restaurant scene. She didn't quite think the vomit humor in that scene was really good.
Yeah.
So she turned that one down. Now, she's also appeared in EastEnders, Coronation Street, Barbara, and The Lady in the Van, and apparently she collects ceramic pigs.
Oh, right.
Jamie DeCourcy was Emma's biggest fan, Marcus Stedman. He is the son of Roger DeCourcy, a well-known ventriloquist who performed a Guess with the Dummy called Nookie Bear. He's appeared in Rush, Downton Abbey, The Crown, and Vera. Julia Swift was sassy server Angie Blunstone. She's a character actress who appeared in The Faint-Hearted Feminist, Dick Turpin, Doctors, and Casualty. Her husband is David Bamber, who has appeared in 3 episodes of Midsomer, even though we have not done any of them yet. Seamus Whitty was Do It for Emma, Liam Booker. He only has 3 on-screen roles, including this one. He also appeared on Holby City and The Bill. I couldn't quite find him online. Liam Booker is There's a few guys named Liam Booker. Harry Burton played plot device Dennis Eberl. He's done a lot of character work, including Agent Cody Banks 2, Secret Invasion, The Sandman, One Love, and FBI International. And Stephen Pimlott had a cameo as the judge of the competition. Now, Pimlott was actually an acclaimed theater director with a legendary body of work. He actually worked with John Nettles on a production of Richard III, so I guess that's how he got the gig. I think must have been just hanging out with Nettles and just doing him a favor. He passed away in 2007.
We have a few return visitors. Adrian Scarborough was kind of sort of Belle-obsessed Peter Fogden. We will see him again in Picture of Innocence and A Dying Art. He's a prolific actor who's gifted at both comedy and drama. Scarborough has won 2 Olivier Awards for his stage work as supporting actor. He's been in The Madness of King George, Gosford Park, The King's Speech, Les Miserables, Gavin and Stacey, Upstairs Downstairs, and mystery fans will know him as the Chelsea Detective. He really just dominates this episode.
He really does. He would be, in any other episode, he would be the village star, but...
we debated this one a little bit, but...
We debated this one, but someone else won out.
Yeah. Claire Holman was Woman with Horrible Taste in Men, Sue Tutt. We discussed her when we did Country Matters and will again in The Miniature Murders. She is most recognizable for playing pathologist Dr. Laura Hobson in both Inspector Morse and Inspector Lewis. She was nominated for an Olivier Award for her role in a 1992 production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. On screen, she's appeared in The Rainbow, Let Him Have It, Sweet Francaise, Blood Diamond, and most recently in The Diplomat and Vera. In a way, I kind of felt her character was a precursor to her character in Country Matters. They're both cooks with bad taste in men.
Well, at least one of them got paid for.
Caroline Lintott was mother-to-be Jen Eberl. She also appears in Death in Disguise, Sins of Commission, and The Straw Woman. Outside of Midsomer, she had small roles in The Six Wives of Henry VIII, The Brief, and Foyle's War. Our village star this time is, of course, Hugh Bonneville, who was our bad with money but lucky with death, Hugh Barton. Bonneville is, of course, best known as the Earl of Grantham on the hit show and movie franchise Downton Abbey, and as the dad in the Paddington films, which everyone should watch. Bonneville was actually born in the Paddington area of London. He spent the first 10 years of his acting career as Richard Bonneville before switching to his real first name, Hugh. He worked with the National Theatre and the RSC, and on screen he's been in Iris, Notting Hill, Mansfield Park, 2012, and most recently in the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin and The Gold.
He is, you know what? Rewatching this one, I was just, again, Hugh Bonneville is just so kind of naturally likable. Even when you're thinking of like he could be like they do some red herring work to make him look like he could be the murderer, like when he grabs Peter and goes ding dong bell.
Yeah.
He just seems like such a goof though that I never took it seriously.
Yeah. He is a very likable actor, even when he's playing a character that's a little maybe not quite as likable as he could be. I think somebody else would have made him a little darker, but I actually like that he made him likable, because then you accept that he and
Sue.
That you get that he and Sue get together at the end. It makes sense that way.
What do you think the choice was to put him in that terrible wig?
Let's not talk about terrible wigs.
That was a bad wig. I mean, it looked like a wig. It didn't seem to. It just looked like a guy who, couldn't afford a haircut.
Yeah. Maybe he couldn't. He was a struggling actor.
No, well, look, I looked at this. I looked at when this episode came out, and I looked at Hugh Bonneville around the time this actually came out after Notting Hill. Mm-hmm. His hair. His natural hair in Notting Hill looked a lot better than this.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break here, and we're going to come back in just a minute with the second half of Ring Out Your Dead. And we're back. Let's talk about the second half of Ring Out Your Dead.
I know there's a difference in our ages, but I think that's exciting. Others will disapprove if they find out, but I'm not going to tell. Are you?
With Liam grieving the loss of his new bride and Peter wondering how in the heck to win the competition, it's time to interview some suspects. Reggie tells Barnaby he was playing the organ for the wedding and Rosalind was turning the pages for him. They couldn't have been the killers, and they also didn't see who was doing the shooting. Maisie informs him that the pages on the bodies are parts of a common rhyme from local history. Remember that dead guy from the opening? Well, that was the local vicar in 1860 who was murdered by bell ringers. So were Greg and Emma killed because they were bell ringers? The detectives thinks it's more likely an attempt to muddy the waters. Both murders were committed with the same gun, but they aren't Frances's replicas. However, Frances is hiding something that Marcus thinks she should reveal to them. Couple of murders is no deterrent to Reggie, who tells Hugh his plan to sell the bells is going to happen straight away, and Sue has agreed to help him send the offer off. Hugh gets a little drunk and tells Peter about Reggie's plan. Peter brings Frances and Marcus together to discuss how to compete. Marcus says he's out because he received a printout like the others, and Frances also received one, but she is still in. Liam joins them, saying he's going to compete for Emma. Afterwards, Frances and Marcus hear a bell ringing at the church. It's the passing bell, which signals an imminent death. They go to investigate, but a locked gate stops Marcus, who doesn't climb. So he goes home. Frances goes in and finds the bell is just a tape. Someone follows Marcus home, causing him to panic and have an asthma attack. He falls onto a bridge, and someone knocks him into the water, where he drowns. Frances is racked with guilt. Marcus and her had formed an almost parent-child relationship. Barnaby is coming around to the idea that someone is targeting bell ringers. They find the walking stick that was used to push Marcus into the water and believe it's Reggie's. So they go to his place, and surprise, he's dead too. Hugh says he passed away in his sleep, probably from over-agitation by those damn bell ringers. In the need of a fresh clue, Troy goes to see Rosalind, who recounts the contents of Greg's letter. The choice of words makes Troy think Emma didn't write it after all. Duh. So the killer pretended to be her to lure Greg there. Frances tells Barnaby that she used to have a pair of real Enfield guns, but they were stolen 10 years ago when her husband was dying. Barnaby and Troy are both called to Sue's shop because someone has broken in. The police grab him, and it's revealed to be Hugh, looking for the letter that Reggie gave Sue. He says he didn't kill Reggie, who did indeed die from natural causes, but he needs the money badly, so he broke in to destroy the letter and thus ending the deal. Sue reveals that the whole letter thing was just a charade, that Reggie knew about Hugh's money issues and was just trying to get him to be more honest with him. In the end, Sue won't press charges against him, and in fact, seems to like the doofus. The bell ringing competition begins the next day because, hey, why not have a competition at an active crime scene? As the teams compete throughout the day, Peter and his group prepare to do double ringing. While they're doing that, Barnaby and Troy do some digging. Troy snoops through Peter's place illegally, while Barnaby researches the story of the bell ringers and the dead vicar. Apparently that murder did happen, and the bell ringers got away with it. Troy finds a handgun wrapped in a drawer. So after the team wins the whole competition, they show up to ask Peter a few questions. He admits to stealing the guns 10 years ago when he had money troubles, but he didn't know how to sell them, so he's just stuck them in a drawer and forgot about them. He is shocked when one of the guns is missing. Joyce goes to Maisie for more information and runs into her nephew. Now, he says his last name is Eberl, the same as the dead vicar. Maisie is only a gooch by marriage, which kind of sounds terrible. Joyce calls Barnaby with the news, and he and Troy race to the gooch home and find the notes on her computer. Meanwhile, Maisie sits quietly in the church. The bell ringers decide to celebrate with some bell ringing, and Maisie quietly follows them up to the tower. For some reason, Peter's bell isn't working, so he sends Liam up to see what's wrong. Liam goes up to the rafters, finds that the clappers have been tied up, and then he's shot. Maisie then comes down the stairs, pointing the gun at the remaining ringers. As Barnaby and Troy try to figure out what to do, we get the reveal. Maisie is nuts. You would think there would be more, but mostly no, Maisie's nuts. A distant relative of the dead vicar, she says that only misfortune has followed her family since the murder, and she has to break the curse before her nephew's child is born. So the bell ringers must pay. Sure, makes sense. While she's been talking, Barnaby has managed to free the clapper, so they ring the bell, which stuns Maisie long enough for Troy to tackle her and knock the gun out of her hand, and then he gets hit in the face with some rope for his bravery, but at least Rosalind is now given a chance to take care of him. And then take care of him. So we've talked in the past about how Midsomer, there's a trope in Midsomer, and in a lot of mystery fiction, I would say, of clearly unstable, insane people who managed to somehow hide it completely in fiction, where in real life they would be very obviously disturbed.
Yeah.
And I think this is quite possibly the best example of this in all of Midsomer.
Yeah, because she is really, really nuts. I mean, and she's one of those people who is, the whole idea behind her thing is not looking at the reality of her family situation, it's putting it on somebody else.
Well, there's a theme in this episode, and that is obsession boiling over into dangerous territory. And in this case, an obsession about her family's history and this past crime that sort of just pushes someone who is probably normally unbalanced into homicidal rage.
Yeah.
Because I was struck by this, I remember watching this for the very first time, and Maisie's character just seems very nervous or anxious, right? Just a very anxious kind of character until the very end. Watching it when you know who the killer is and you know what she's doing, you actually can see her performance as someone holding back the crazy.
Yeah.
Like she knows that if she says the wrong thing, she's going to give the game away, but it's clearly all she's thinking about.
Yeah.
That said, if she is really crazy or unbalanced, this is a very complicated plan.
It is, but I think it gets to that part of obsessive crazy where things get overplanned and overdone.
But I don't know what the plan is, because she keeps doing the printouts and she has the guns. But I'm also like, well, if she just wanted to go kill all the bell ringers, just go up to the bell. Like, you have a gun, just go up and start just shooting.
Yeah. And why not start with Peter? Because he's obviously the leader. And that would really disintegrate the group.
I just think about, like, in America, obviously we have a lot of unstable people with access to guns. And a lot of these mass shootings are generally from people who are unstable. And that's the thing that's kind of struck me, is like, well, and I'm like, if she's really this obsessed with bell ringers and they all need to pay and they all need to die, she would just go in and start firing.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing with the poems, which that just seemed to me that it's just like, well, now we're venturing into Seven territory.
Yeah. Which is fine in fiction.
It is fine. It is fine. It was, so the poem, so the original poem is called Ding Dong Bell. The most common version, according to Wikipedia, Ding Dong Bell, Pussy's in the well, who put her in? Little Johnny Green, who pulled her out? Little Tommy Stout. And then I guess in Midsomer Wellow, because, they're so used to death. So they've changed it to, so Ding Dong Bell, which is the sign that's put on Greg. Vickers in the well, which is the sign that's for Emma. Who put him in is the thing they find with Marcus. Frances had Little Tommy Thin, which I guess she was going to be next. And then I guess would be who pulled him out? Little Tommy Stout.
Yeah. Or variations on that.
Yeah. So this is the local, again, some really sick gallows humor from the Midsomer community.
Yep. It's a nursery rhyme I had been familiar with, but I think it's more common in the UK to know that one. Yeah.
So it's clearly, she's clearly has a complicated plan of, I'm going to kill this person, and then I'm going to kill this person, and then I'm going to kill this person.
Yeah. I
like the little touches, like especially at the end where she keeps saying, when she's like talking to them, pointing the gun, and there's like, the man you killed. Like, and they're like, we didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you have to pay the debt.
Yeah. And I love it's how sweetly and yet menacingly she turns to Tom and says, thank your wife for all the cups of tea. I enjoyed being in your house. Yeah. I was like, well, that's creepy.
Yeah. She's clearly unstable. And it's just, although she's unstable enough to know, like, how did she know that Peter had the guns? Because he stole them and stuck them in a drawer 10 years ago.
Yeah.
How did she, has she been was she rifling around Peter's house?
Well, maybe she was just one of those snoopy people who would go into people's houses while they were ringing bells and look around, and she found them and took one.
Well, then why isn't she working for a Coston Police Department?
Her illegal searches and won't affect a prosecution, so that's why she didn't have to put the gun back and make it appear like he wasn't there.
I also kind of wondered, so when there's the slow moving chase with Marcus,
yeah,
there sort of in the background we hear what sounds like voices. It's that very creepy like that kind of voice noise.
Mm-hmm.
Considering that seemed to be from her perspective, was that her hearing voices?
Maybe.
I was wondering that watching it. I was like watching it again, knowing how it ends. I was like, oh, is that just a subtle way of saying that she's hearing voices?
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. The voice of the vicar.
Yeah.
And the generations of her family who apparently were all failures.
Or she's schizophrenic.
Yeah.
So one thing about the whole ending, what happened to Liam? We see him like shot and bleeding at the top of the church. We never see what happens to him.
Yeah, I think there's an assumption that he survives because, you see Barnaby taking care of him. But yeah, they should have had a scene where they were putting him in the ambulance. His injury was a little bit more dire than Troy's.
Liam surviving was a little more important than Troy getting laid. Let's talk a little on Peter.
Yeah.
Because I think that, again, we're talking about obsession in this episode. He is also the flip side of Maisie, but his obsession is also dangerously close to insanity. But it's this just drive to win.
Mm-hmm.
Very single-minded purpose.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think of Peter?
I think we've all known people like Peter. And again, Adrian Scarborough does a fantastic job with him. With the character, but he is very single-minded. He is like one of those high-end athletes who all they think about is the competition, the job, the drive. Yeah, I can see him like maybe going into motivational speaking after this for bell ringers.
Maybe. I mean, it was a focus slowly on the competition and bell ringing to the point that it shaded how he saw the entire world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like go beyond the fact that he's kind of nasty to the team and a slave driver, that he is manipulative, like that scene where he's trying to get Liam to do it for Emma, but he's really like, no, you're going to do it for me.
Yeah.
But that everything, even how he sees the murders.
Yeah.
It's in the terms of the competition. It's either mind games from another team, or this is how other teams are going to try to win a stupid bell ringing competition. Like, it's obsessive to the point of insane because it's like, no one's going to murder to win a bell ringing competition. There's not even a money involved.
No, it's a plaque.
Yeah,
it's a crystal cake platter. To bring in the Great British Bake Off prize. But people do get very competitive for competitions. And this is a small competition. It's 6 teams. And he gets so obsessed with it. It's not even like, and if we win this, we'll go to the next level of the competition. No, it's like, that was the whole end game. It was 6 teams. You were beating 5 others. And your whole being was so wrapped up in this.
It makes me wonder because that wonderful scene where he's gloating to his dead uncle's plaques.
Yeah.
That he is still the first one in the family to win. Like, what was, like, you kind of also wonder, what was that home life like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, were they all, is this just a family of bell obsessives?
Yeah.
But I thought that Scarborough does such a great job, again, sort of layering in someone who's borderline insane. Like when he calls their performance brilliant, his eyes are like, he's got crazy eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he does that scene where he is practicing the entire night before, right? And then he's just like, we're going to get, like, that wonderful way of he reads the line of like, I'm going to get every bloody one of you. Now, clearly means the other teams, but is he the killer?
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's a great way to do it. When they win the competition, he's running out like, I won, I won, I won. Not we won.
Yeah.
There's no I in team, Peter.
Yeah. That is for sure. He is so obsessed that he sees the members of the team as an extension of himself, which in a way, and I know they have to consider him as a suspect, but as a viewer, you're kind of eliminating him because it's like he needed those other people.
Yeah.
Because I gotta tell you, double ringing is not easy.
And that's okay. So let's just point this out for a second. For all their complaints about double ringing in the episode, it didn't seem that hard because they did it with no practice and won.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
No, that is not the case. It's very hard. For one thing, bell ringing is hard because you have to get the timings absolutely correct. And he was picking up on those subtle, like, lateness, cues and stuff. And you have to memorize an entire, list of permutations where you're changing each time. It's not like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And what you're developing when you're practicing is muscle memory and mental memory of those permutations. To then suddenly go and do somebody else's part of that is really, really hard. These are like, it's like an ice skater learning a jump. That's why they do it so many times. It's muscle memory. You're developing muscle memory. And still, in a high-level competition, a skater will fall. A gymnast will fall off a balance beam because muscle memory, is imperfect, but it's all you've got. And when you're ringing the bells and you're doing it in a certain way, and then you have to change that, that's going against your muscle memory. There's no way they should have won that competition, but it's fiction, so they did.
Well, it also makes that scene of him practicing all night kind of extra goofy because it's like, are you going to like yell at them like left hand, right hand, left hand?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of you walking around in every single position?
Yeah.
You can't do it all yourself. What's going on? It was very weird.
Yeah. And I will say, watching the videos of the people doing it and everything, they're generally very nice looking people. They do not seem obsessive. They just really enjoy bell ringing.
Yeah. He enjoys it so much that now he's won. He's got nothing left to live for, which I thought was an interesting statement as he's about to get a gun pointed into his face.
Yeah.
You just wanted like one line and go like, I have wasted my life.
Yeah.
I could have had sex.
Hey, he was married at one point.
I think we all know why he was divorced too.
Oh, we have no qualms about who was the person who initiated that.
So speaking of people with obsessive towards the bells, Reggie was obsessively hating on those bells.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand why.
I did not know why.
Called it a sacrilege, which seemed a weird thing to say in the 2000s.
They've been ringing these bells for hundreds of years, Reggie.
Now,
they do it for the Queen. Get over yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's just the noise, okay, then just say it. It's like, you are ringing these bells. I get you have a competition, but you need to back off, man. I cannot. And because we never hear the bells in the village, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never hear, like, if the bells were constantly ringing or making noise in the background, I would get it. Oh my God, these bells, why don't they stop?
Yeah.
It's like a jackhammering. Stop it.
Yeah.
But in his rage, he's got some great lines. Calls them all a bunch of desperados.
That may have been true before the reforms.
Again, go back to that Western idea. Bell ringing desperados. I think we've got something here.
Yep.
Called Marcus weak, which not wrong.
Yeah.
But the weak must face the consequences. And I loved it when he screamed, "Vengeance is mine." That's in the Bible. And he's right. That's Deuteronomy 32:35. Vengeance is mine and recompense for the time where their foot shall slip, for the day of their calamity is at hand and their doom comes swiftly.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be from God's POV.
I had to Google it because I was just like, that can't be in the Bible. And I was like, oh yeah, it's in the Bible.
Oh yeah, it's in the Bible.
Everything's in the Bible. And then you get to his whole letter writing charade with Hugh. Seemed a bit overly complicated and cruel.
Yeah. There did seem to be some very overly complicated and cruel aspects to a lot of people in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the murders, and as we discussed...
He and Maisie went to planning school.
Yeah. Yeah, Maisie killing Emma as she's happy on her wedding day, shooting her right in the heart. That was so cruel. And him kind of playing games with Hugh was cruel.
Yeah, I mean, I get why, but it was just like, just tell him
Yeah.
Like, you want Hugh to come clean. I get it, but this isn't an episode of Three's Company.
Yeah.
Or more appropriately, this isn't an episode of Arrested Development with like the dad's complicated play. And that's why you never...
Yeah.
There is a world where this Midsomer Murders episode, all these deaths are actually a complicated plot to get Hugh to come clean. And at the very end, the bodies all pop and go, and that's why you never lie to someone
about your finances.
I did love that Hugh had that clear, unrequited love for Sue.
Mm-hmm. You get through the whole thing that he is really into Sue. She's married, but now that Greg has had his clothes tossed out and then gets murdered, she's now free. She doesn't seem much the grieving widow, but
she's gonna miss that bathrobe, though.
She is gonna miss that bathrobe, or maybe she just gave him one she didn't like. But you do, and that's why having Hugh Bonneville being kind of very lovable, even as he's playing this guy who's supposed to be a pretty big suspect, why you get it at the end that she would say, yeah, I think this is something we can do.
Yeah, it was a very sweet moment to end an episode. It was kind of like a sweet romantic gesture, pairing it with the fact that Troy...
that Troy's getting laid.
Yeah. Let's take a moment to just talk about the Francis and Marcus relationship.
Mm-hmm.
She describes it as a mother and son relationship. I was like, is she bullying him?
I think there is an element of the over-domineering mother here. And I think she knows that he needs someone to kind of take him under her wing and guide him, but she overdoes it a bit too much.
There was a point where I was just like, man, she's really, really being a jerk here for no reason. Yeah. And then she feels a lot of guilt in how she treated him.
Yeah.
And that was that scene where she kind of breaks down. Great performance.
Oh, yeah. All in all, great performances all around.
Yeah. What did you think of Marcus's obsession with Emma?
We've seen that before. That's usually denotes a murderer, or at least a strong suspect.
That room.
Yeah.
Where we finally get the full view of the room.
Yeah.
And his little weird box of mementos.
Yeah.
I kind of love that when he's like, I don't climb. Yeah. And it's a tiny fence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, are you too weak to live?
Well, yeah. That gets answered. That gets answered pretty quickly. Yeah.
When Maisie pushes him with the most gentle of push.
Yeah.
Like when your cat just knocks something off the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of cats, a lot of animals.
Which is great. And that's one of the things I always love about, especially in the older days, they had more animals in them.
Yes. Well, you had Rosalind's dog.
Mm-hmm. I love when she says, I don't speak Labrador.
I forget what the name of the dog was. Reggie's cat was named Spitfire, which was the nicest thing about Reggie.
Yeah.
And then Peter's cat was named Clapper.
Of course.
Very appropriately named. So, actually they have Peter Clapper, like a bell. Reggie Spitfire, because he's always argumentative. You think Rosalind's dog was named Horn Dog?
She may have just gone with sex. This is my dog, Sex. I like sex.
Good boy, Sex. Does Sex want their belly rubbed? Corner, except there was no coroner.
No. Not we get a phone call.
Yeah. Off
and we
camera.
Don't even hear him.
Yeah. They mentioned the Emmy, never seen. Don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe he couldn't do the episode and they were like, well, we can't fire him. We tried that already.
Yeah. To be honest, the killings were pretty straightforward with the shootings.
Yeah. And, I think they actually got a lot of decent, like, kind of detective-y stuff, I
Yeah.
thought, in this episode. I really like those scenes where they're spending a lot of time trying to hash out what the killer's motive is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, they go down and I love it. The most obvious thing is like, well, someone's targeting bell ringers. Oh, that just seems weird.
Yeah.
Must be more complicated. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
And then when Troy suggests that there might be two killers, and Barnaby is like, "Oh, please, we can't even deal with one right now."
They had another legal search.
Yeah,
And then when they actually find evidence, Barnaby's like, get out, get out, get out.
yeah. Put it back. Get out.
We're going to get in trouble if we get
Yeah.
busted for this. But obviously the biggest detective-y thing in this episode is Troy becomes a man.
Yep.
I actually loved the chemistry between Troy and Rosalind.
I did too. I did. I have to say I like Troy a lot in this episode.
I did too. It was very clear that Troy really does need a strong woman,
Yeah.
and Rosalind is that woman.
Yeah.
He's freaked out by her, like, the openness of her desire, her willingness to just, like, yeah, Greg's gone. I destroyed all the stuff, right? He's
Yeah.
freaked out by it.
Yeah. He's used to a very traditional viewpoint of the world.
Maybe she's going to blow his mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. Cough there. That scene where you think she's propositioning him, and it's just her remembering that letter. That was a great scene.
That was a great scene. I loved the way they filmed that.
They filmed it perfectly, and then you get that twist, right? Like, you
Yeah.
think it's like, oh, she's outlaying how bad she wants him. It's like, oh, it's the letter. How did she remember all that after only 5 seconds?
I want to know how Troy, who wasn't familiar with Conan Doyle, as we discussed before, how he could pick up on certain words that Emma wouldn't have used. That
Right.
seemed way too sophisticated for Troy.
In fact, especially since the only thing he really knew about Emma was her midriff looked good.
Yeah.
Barnaby's advice to him at the end, call 999 in case of emergency.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Dan Scott would not have hesitated a moment
No.
if he had been in Troy's position. I'm not sure about the other DSs. Jones, I think, would have reacted a bit the way that Troy does, but I think he would have been a little more game a little earlier.
I think Jones would have been like, I'm on duty. Dan Scott would have been like, when they called him for the burglary, like, I'm busy.
Yeah. Winter, I think, would have been, I'm sorry, ma'am, no.
Winter, I think, would have been like Jones, on duty, but game.
Yeah.
Nelson, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because Nelson always seemed to be they kept trying to pair Nelson up with the coroners at the time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
This feels like a game of F, marry, kill. But Rosalind, like, here's your 3 DIs, F, marry, kill.
Well, obviously Rosalind, then Sue, and unfortunately Emma.
No, I meant like Rosalind would look at the 3 DIs and be like, all right, so Troy, F.
Yeah.
Jones, marry, Scott, kill.
I think they would have all been in the F category.
Yeah, probably. She's not the marrying kind.
She has a husband, he's away.
Yep. Let's check in on the home life. So Joyce solved this, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Just calls him up. He's like, I found out that the gooch is actually an Eberl.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's your murderer.
We just stop for a second and just say, what kind of last name is Gooch? If this is a traditional English name, I just want you to know, sorry. And that comes from a guy whose last name has been used in all kinds of fun ways. If she was an NFL linebacker, her nickname would be the Gooch.
Yeah. Oh, definitely the Gooch.
Maisie, the Gooch.
Yeah.
Rubbings is an excellent decoration, is it?
I love the way he's like, this isn't going on the wall, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like he just knows that Joyce is going to forget about this in 10 minutes when she takes another class.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Final thoughts.
I think this is a really good episode. It's one that I always remember. It's got some great performances. It's really memorable because of the characters, because of the way they portray obsession through so many different levels of it, that I think works very well. I do wish they had fleshed Angie out a little bit more in her relationship with the other characters, other than, obviously Sue, who she likes, but apparently was bonking her husband, and her reaction to Hugh. But, what was her relationship with Emma and Liam, and why was she staring at them? So it looks like something might have been on the cutting room floor, but,
Yeah, that's fine, because for me that was fine. Just it makes it's a little confusing, but overall, I think this is a great episode, and I think it works because they've done such a really good job at creating characters that we kind of empathize with or really like. Liam and Emma. It's one of those few murders in Midsomer where you actually feel it, right? Like
yeah,
that's a really hard moment, and it's because they've done a really good job of making us care about it.
yeah,
Marcus's death is a little sad. Frances, I thought, was well played. Like her you care about these characters in a way that you don't normally with a lot of Midsomer episodes. They really establish this village and this world, and that's they do that. Part of that is like the time we get with them before even the first murder.
yeah,
It really establishes that world to the point where like you have a stakes in it. When they do the murders in the beginning, right? We get maybe like 2 minutes with them. We don't really get a sense of like they just usually establish, well, this person's a jerk.
yeah,
In this one, because we spent so much time establishing them, the deaths feel there's impact there.
yeah.
And I think that's what makes it very good. And it has this wonderful twist ending of just like, hey, you didn't really see that coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this is a great one. The Troy Rosalind stuff is hysterical. The side stories, like the Hugh thing, has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the episode, but it's a fun little side story. I think this is a great episode. I don't know if I would put it in my top 10, but it would be in contention.
Yeah, I definitely think it's definitely up there. Maybe not top 10, but definitely in contention for that if I were ranking them.
This would be one of those ones of like, oh, it would be a hard cut if I had to cut it.
Yeah. This is one where, as you said, even though we know that Greg is a philanderer, we still like him, Yeah. We like Emma because Liam loves her, and that we all knew at the beginning that that was not her putting out that or sending Greg that letter. We knew all that before Liam did, but that these are they're not perfect, but they're basically nice people. We like them. They're Marcus he's a nice guy. He's a little obsessive over, again, another level of obsession. He's sad in a way, but there's a sadness to this in all that humor, because they do a lot of humor in this one.
The sadness is in the ending, I think, especially when you find out how pointless the deaths really were.
Yeah.
Like they didn't, Greg was a jerk. Sure. Emma didn't do anything wrong. Marcus didn't do anything. Like the deaths were just the actions of a very sick individual.
Yeah.
And it was literally, if they hadn't been bell ringers, they would not have been killed. And I think that's what gives the even more of like a hard ending of just like, oh, they died for nothing.
Yeah.
There was no great plan. There was no motive. There was just a sick person had a gun.
Yeah. And found a way to justify.
Yep. Great overall episode that ended with that last shot of Barnaby on the phone answering another call while drinking his tea.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's everything we wanted to talk about. If you have anything you want to discuss about Ring Out Your Dead or Midsomer Murders, please feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. If you want us to use the email in the show, you've got to say so in your email. We are also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Thank you for all your comments. We got a few regulars on there who are so effusive with saying how much they like the show. Thank you so much. That means the world to us. We do this for you guys. We are also Welcome to Midsomer on YouTube, and we are uploading all our old episodes there. So please follow us on any of these places if you aren't already. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes or Spotify. That really does help people find us. It helps us in the algorithms, in that nebulous world of algorithms. Tell all your friends about us. We're going to be back soon with a new episode. We hope you will join us for that as we take the road out of Midsomer. We want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, ringing a bell can be murder.
Especially if you don't stop.
Please stop. Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exception for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space. Gwen Taylor was sharpshooter Francis LeBon.
Is it LeBon or LeMay?
Is it LeMay?
I thought you said LeMay earlier. Let me.
I think you know what? I think I put LeBon for Duran Duran.
Yeah.
So let's say well, she was hungry like a wolf.